Today we're going to be talking about a sketchy topic for some people, and that is evolution. Well, specifically in this video, we're going to talk about evolution by natural selection, a theory, hypothesized by Charles Darwin. Well, let me give you some background information about Charles Darwin and his investigations of natural selection. Why don't I write his name? This looks a little bit boring. Darwin. Although, I'm sure you're not very excited about learning about Darwin, but let me try to make it as intriguing as possible. So Darwin was an English naturalist. He was writing on the voyage, the Beagle, or more specifically, the HMS Beagle. Why don't I write that down? HMS Beagle. HMS Beagle. And so, he started writing about the organisms and the traits he was observing, but didn't publish them for about 20 years. There was lots of a debate after he published it, specifically from religion, and even more specifically from the Christian societies, as they believed that it contradicted the biblical way of seeing things. Why don't I get down into the 5 major tenets of Darwin's theories? So, we'll have 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How about that? The first one was natural variation. Natural variation. And all this simply means, it's a very simple tenet. All it means is that there are variations or differences among organisms in a species. You're different from me. Your dog is probably different from your other dog. And so there are this one is very observable in our everyday lives. So, natural variation. Why don't I short that down a little bit, because my writing isn't quite so good with this mouse here. I might want to invest in a better type of equipment. But nonetheless, let's continue on to the second tenet. Limited survival / reproduction. Essentially, this means is some organisms, I should say, are more successful in survival than others. Why don't I write that down? Limited survival. Limited survival. And after this, I'm going to go step by step, telling you about what I did. Let me go back. Limited survival. And the third one, he said, was simply natural selection, and this means who's going to survive and reproduce. Natural selection. Apologize for my dog barking. Natural selection. And fourth, we have inherited adaptations, meaning that individuals who survive is because of genes and passed to offspring. Inherited adaptation. Inherited adaptation. Alright, well, for number 5, or our 5th one, we'll have change of trait frequency, meaning, which is simply the definition of evolution and change. Change of trait frequency. Well, now that I've done that, let me go into a little bit more detail. Number 1, natural variation. I mean that these variations exist among organisms. I give you a pretty good example. For instance, zebras have patterns, if you may or not have noticed, with other zebras, different patterns. And limited survival and reproduction. What I mean by that is that the numbers of individuals in a population is greater than those who survive and reproduce. As for the third tenet, natural selection, I mean that the organisms, I should say, that are better adapted to the place they're living in or their environment, they have a better chance of doing this thing called surviving and reproducing, which essentially contributes to the bigger picture of thriving, and thriving in general. Well, what do I mean about inherited adaptation? Well, what I mean by that is that there are many adaptations that may be inherited, and because of this, it could be transmitted to their offspring, meaning the kids, and down in that quote-unquote genetic line. And as for the final one, we have change of trait frequency. Those inheritable traits that improve survival and reproduction. Well, I hope you learned quite a bit about this man, Charles Darwin. He's certainly an influential thinker. He even spawned a new thinking in psychology as well as biology, and of course evolution. I hope to see you guys in the next episode. See you.